Good evening and welcome to the June 27th meeting of the Mayor and City Council. I'd like to take a moment to recognize State Senator John Albers. Thank you for being here this evening. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure.
Never pass up an opportunity.
You never ask a politician if they can say a few words or not. It's great to be here. Mayor Pro Tem and Council, thank you for all you do. I love being a resident of Roswell. We have just extraordinary city government here. All the services you provide are really the benchmark for most any other city, not just in Georgia, but certainly in the nation. And I see a lot of good friends out here. If I can ever do anything to serve you, please let me know. Contact me by phone or email, but my job is to serve you. Thank you, Mayor. God bless you all.
Thank you, Senator. We certainly appreciate all that you do. We know you're working hard for us. If Will Albers would come forward and lead us in the pledge.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, Will, we have a tradition here in council chambers that whenever we have a Boy Scout present that we have them come up to the microphone and say a few words. And I know this is a very special event for you because you're celebrating getting your Eagle Scout. So we want to give you an opportunity to tell us about that and to congratulate you and tell us what you think about scouting.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor and Council. Well, to be an Eagle Scout, the main part of getting your Eagle Scout is to complete what they call a project. The project can be a physical item like I did, or it can be something such as teaching magic tricks to nurses in hospitals to uplift the patients undergoing treatment. Well, for the project, the one thing that they want you to do is to leave a legacy. Or whatever you do, you could go back 10 years later, 20 or whenever, and say, I did that. For my project, I helped out Enable. It's a group that helps physically and mentally disabled people, and they combine them with their different skills and traits and put them in a home so that they can live together and on their own. So for them, the first thing I did is I built a 40-foot small short retaining wall on the side of their driveway because there was an eroding mound of debris and mulch going down the side, so that was able to help them drive up and easily access their home better. The second thing I did is when I was in there, they had a small plastic shed, and on the side they had an eroded fence that they were keeping their trash cans in that was broken down because some of the people couldn't lift the full trash cans. So what I did for them is I built them a 10-foot by 10-foot foundation so they could put the shed back on. And then I built two little enclosures for the trash cans, so if the wind blew that they could pull them back out, but that they wouldn't have to lift them over, they could just slide them around. And once I was done, I planted a few bushes and laid a few bales of pine straw and made it all look nice.
Wow, that is really amazing. Now, did you do all that yourself, or did you gather some folks to do that?
Oh no, the good part about the project is you write it up. The hard part is getting it passed. I think my project ended up being 38 pages long with all the drawings and everything written up. But the fun part is you're the project manager on the site, so you can ask Dad. I worked him good for 2 days and about 30 other people that showed up.
That's great. Well, congratulations. Job well done.
Well, thank you very much.
Could I ask Council for a photo op with young Mr. Albers? Thank you.
Your son. Look at your son. I'll just...
He's big. All right, here. He's fine here. All right.
Sweet.
There we go. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Congratulations, Will.
If you'd like to address the mayor and council tonight, please go to the back of the room and fill out one of the speaker cards and bring it forward when we call on you to speak. You'll have an opportunity at each of the agenda items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilman Orland.
I would like to remove item 1 from the consent agenda for a little further discussion, and with that, move for approval of the remaining items on the consent agenda.
We have a motion to remove item 1, which is the council meeting minutes from May 23rd, June 1st, and June 13th, and approval for the balance of the consent agenda. Do we have a second? Second. Do we have any comment from the public? Seeing none, Councilman Orleans, would you like, I close the public hearing. Councilman Orleans, would you like to elaborate on your motion?
Finish the first motion, and then...
Well, before we vote on it, I was just looking for some comment on it.
Okay, well, I moved for the rest of the items to be approved, and then I thought we'd discuss this, but basically on page 4 of the minutes, second paragraph under council comments, I would like to have the staff go back and listen to the tapes, because there's some words in there that are not the correct words, but I don't remember them off the top of my head. So if city clerk can go back and listen to the tapes and correct that second paragraph, I would appreciate it.
Just so we make sure we have the right location, it's the second paragraph of which page?
On page 4 of 14, under council comments, it'll be the second paragraph where I was speaking, and for example, the third line, the word objectionable was not used, and there's a couple other words in there, so if they could go back and listen to the tape again to correct these minutes. As I said, I don't remember the exact word. So if they can come back with the correction for approval in the future.
I am being informed that we need to approve the minutes, but so I understand we need to approve the minutes subject to making those revisions. Is that acceptable?
Sure.
Would you
That's
like
fine.
to amend your motion?
Okay. I'll move for, well, they weren't included to begin with, but okay, I'll redo the motion. Move for approval of the consent agenda with exception of item 1 being approved based on changes made according to the actual tape in paragraph 2 under council comments, page 4 of 14.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Price.
I'll have to admit, as I read them, I wasn't sure what meeting I had been at, but be that as it may, we generally don't do verbatim minutes. Is that correct? And these are just summary minutes. Therefore, there's a lot of latitude to the clerk.
Ms. Love, could you elaborate on that?
That is correct. However, if there is a question brought up related to a particular word or intent or sentence, then we certainly will go back and review that audio to ensure that an error was not made.
Because while we're at it, I'd like the first paragraph under council comments also to be looked at and clarified in view of the motion, which it isn't clear what the amendment was to the motion.
Is there an amendment to the motion, or was that really just a statement on your part?
That's my point. Reading these minutes, you have no idea.
Would you like us to take any further action, I guess is my question?
Yeah, I'm asking that not only paragraph 2 be looked at and clarified, but paragraph 1 as well.
Our Councilmember Orleans, are you okay? Okay. Councilmember Wynn, are you?
No objection.
So we have a motion. We have an amended motion. We have a second. Do we have any further discussion by council? All in favor, raise their hands. Well, I guess I don't need to vote because we have a quorum. It is unanimous. Motion passes. At this time, I'd like to call upon our police chief to recognize Police Lieutenant Bill Anastasio.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Council, it's a great honor and privilege tonight to be able to recognize some of our officers, particularly one is in May of 2011, we had 3 lieutenants, Lieutenant Francis Watson, Lieutenant Jeffrey Lanier, and Lieutenant William Anastasio, graduated from the Northwestern University's 312th class of the School of Police Staff and Command. This is considered one of the most prestigious and premier advanced training and command classes in the country. It was hosted by Alpharetta Police, and we had 3 of our staff, along with officers from across the state of Georgia and some from outside the state, traveled here for 1 week a month for 10 months to participate in this program. It's a long, rigorous program. And part of this class, they will elect a president, a vice president, secretary, and several other officers. And as they did that at the beginning of the course, they elected as their vice president Lieutenant Bill Anastasio. And as part of their class project, he led the way. And each class has a project. And one of the things that they did was had a goal of raising $5,000 to help one of the North Metro programs to assist special needs children with occupational education and school program. They raised $9,000 in addition to also doing volunteer work for the school there in Alpharetta. They also, at the end of the course, elect the one student who the student and the other class members and instructors elect the one student that they think represents the highest ethical and professional values and dedication to public service for which the center was founded, and award that person with the Franklin M. Criminal Leadership Award. Lieutenant Anastasio was presented that award at graduation, and it's needless to say this is a great accomplishment to receive one of the highest awards presented by this great school when you're surrounded with so many great students of the highest caliber that they have. This is sincerely a very tough command college, and if you would please join me in recognizing and congratulating Lieutenant Bill Anastasio.
Lieutenant, would you like to say a few words?
Oh, you're not going to get off that easy up here.
There were 30 men and women from all over who participated, and equally, every one of them did an outstanding job with the program, helping each other through and raising that money for those really needy special kids. And I'm proud to be a part of all those people that were in our class. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you gentlemen sit down, I'd like to have you back up for a photo op with the council. like to mention that this evening Mayor Wood and Councilmember Eigelhart are both at the GMA conference with excused absences. At this time, I'd like to call on Councilmember Orleans to address the Administration and Finance agenda.
First item is approval to renew an intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County for animal control services in the amount of $63,546. Mr. Fisher is going to be presenting this, and I don't know if anybody noticed a couple of weeks ago that investigative reporter Randy Travison from Fox 5 did a little story about the contractor that provides the services for Fulton County. But we'll get into that in a few minutes here. I've got a comment on that as well. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember Orleans. This is for an intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County. It's for a 2-year term from July 1 of 2011, and it concludes on June 30th of 2013. The item request for tonight is for the renewal of the IGA and to have the service provided for a 1-year time period from July 1 of 2011 through June 30th of 2012. This IGA has annual cost of $63,546, which would be in 2 semi-annual payments, 50% at the time of approval of the IGA and 50% after 6 months of time. The calculated reporting time period that Roswell had, they looked back at the previous year to work out the formula of the pay. And for the previous reporting time, there were 746 activities that were identified by the county to charge for the city. So the request tonight would be for the review and approval of the IGA with Fulton County for the animal control services.
Council have any questions? Councilmember Price.
What did we pay last year?
I don't have that information from last year.
About $67,000. This renewal is just a little less based on fewer calls for service, slightly.
Council have any other questions? Do we have any questions or comments from the public?
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Price?
I've had an email correspondence with Ms. Love over the course of today, just trying to figure out exactly what do we get for this, because the agreement basically says as the county contract with the entity that provides the services. So it's not really clear what exact services we get in terms of, say, response time, et cetera. I know whenever I've called them, they send somebody out a couple days later when, you've got a barking dog in your front yard. 2 days later really doesn't cut it. Now, I know that there's a new entity providing the service that, according to Ms. Love, we're receiving fewer complaints. But just the same, it'd be nice to know that we have a report that shows exactly what we're getting for the service, how many calls they received. It says we're entitled to get the report, so I don't know if they automatically give it without us asking. Also, I was sort of surprised to find out that it does not include roadkill. So it just seems like a lot of money. And I guess the thing that really caught my eye was the portion of the indirect costs that we are also required to pay, and that was, well, our portion was less, but it was $250,000 in indirect costs. So not sure what indirect costs the county has that can justify $250,000 since they're just subcontracting it to another service entity. So I'd like to see us look into that a little further.
Okay, we actually have a request in. We got this one just recently, and it's due by the 1st. So we went ahead and asked for that request to get a copy of that contract, and certainly we didn't receive it yet today. But we are looking to get that in to find out if we can define exactly what those services are. And we can also, of course, look at any of the books, and the financials are open. So with those questions that you have in mind, we intend to find out what those are and get that information. But I don't have that available for you tonight.
And then I see that we'll leave some money in the account after that. So is it appropriate just to leave that in there in the event that next year's is more, or can we reappropriate
That's
that?
we can reappropriate it now, or we can leave it into roll, because if we continue to do the service, it'll be again next year. The contract period is actually for a 2-year period, but tonight we're asking for the 1 year just for the appropriations. So if we do renew next year, we can use that money at that time if we so desired.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fisher, we have 746 activities. What would be considered an activity?
That's what we'll be asking for, is what the breakdown of those calls were. We just have the number that you have too within your packet.
What would be examples? Is that
Whether it was a rabies call or a dog bite or a nuisance complaint type call, those kind of things should be in the report.
so animal control responds to nuisance controls as well?
They do dog bites, they do, if there's rabies issues, they do complaints from neighborhoods and from neighbors. So we'll try to get a listing of what each of those calls were. I'm assuming there'll be a breakdown in there somewhere.
Do we know if somebody is dispatched each time there is a call? Is that
I
likely?
don't know that.
Without having the additional information?
I don't know that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the audience? Hearing none, I close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Part of the motion, too, is I would like to have a letter signed by the mayor and our city administrator encouraging Fulton County to audit the vendor that provides the service, because in watching that report and then looking up some details from it online, there's a lot of charges that by contract should not be in there from the vendor to Fulton County, and Fulton County had not audited them in 3 years. So I would just like us to send a letter of note to encourage Fulton County to audit them every single year to look at this. Now, we are paying based on the calls we get, but overall those costs are going into the Fulton County contract and they need to be pulled out of there. And I know we've got to move forward with this now. We don't have any other choices at the present time. We've looked in the past, and I would like to have us continue to try to look for options in the future. But in the meantime, with that letter and note, I will go ahead and move for approval to renew the intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County for the animal control services in the amount of $63,546.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Further discussion by council? All in favor, raise your hands. That is unanimous.
Next item is approval of budget amendment 1585-06-27-11 to increase the FY 2011 approved revenue budget by $1,392,754 and increase the FY 2011 approved expenditure budget by $1,207,754. And I believe Keith Lee is going to quickly and easily explain this to everybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilmember Orleans. This item is primarily a cleanup from the year of operations. The revenues are directly related to electricity fees, some insurance payments, and additional fees that we've received from employees and recreation. We need to allocate the use of fund balance for 911 and workers' comp, and some expenditures in electricity due to rate increases in mid-year, as well as the expenditures associated with the insurance and 911 workers' comp fees. We also would like approval to utilize $9,000 from the Convention and Visitors Bureau contingency funds.
Are there any comments from council? Do we have any comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I move for approval of this item.
We have a motion. We have a second. Second by Councilmember Diamond. All in favor, raise your hands.
One question.
One question by Councilmember Price.
The item 4, where does that show on the next page?
Item 4 is already in the budget. It's just budgeted as contingency funds, and they require approval of council. So it would already be in the hotel motel fund. The seventh line on the top.
Ms. Love, would you care to elaborate?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Price, when the Convention and Visitors Bureau submits their budget every year, they give us an idea about the items that they would expect to spend from the contingency funds. It does sit in contingency in the event it needs to change, and then it takes the council approval in order to appropriate that. They actually expend the money, and then we reimburse them for that. So there are a variety of items. In the past, they've done things such as had a display built for pamphlets and information in the Visitors Center. This particular one includes remaking of their video and several other items. I don't remember those off the top of my head. Keith, you may.
They did some hospitality highway press as well as an exhibit display.
Do we have any further questions by council? We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, raise your hands. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Next item is approval to amend the City of Roswell Fund Equity Policy. And Julia Luke is here to explain the minor adjustment in that policy.
Correct. Excuse me. We got y'all to adopt the policy after 2 really long, boring meetings explaining what the policy was, and we appreciate it. But we also found out that we had failed to have a person authorized to make sure the resources were properly assigned in the assigned fund balance category. And what you're doing tonight is authorizing your finance director to take that responsibility.
Thank you, Ms. Luke. The meeting might have been long, but it certainly was not boring.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any comments from council? Do we have any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Councilmember Price.
On the yellow highlighted, it says under the dollar threshold. What is that dollar threshold where it requires our approval?
$25,000.
Do we have any further comments or questions from council? Do we have a motion?
Move for approval of this item.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. All in favor? Raise your hand.
Thank you.
That's unanimous. Next, I'll call on Councilmember Betty Price with Community Development.
The first item is approval of a resolution to submit an FY 2011 Livable Centers Initiative, or LCI, supplemental study application for Roswell Town Center / Atlanta Street. Alice Wakefield.
Yes, this item on June the 14th at the committee meeting, the committee approved, staff to approve a grant application to the ARC for LCI supplemental funds. This is a 50-50 match funding program whereby you can get up to $50,000, but you also have to match $50,000. Staff is of the opinion that this will be a great opportunity to supplement the Gateway Master Plan effort, since that property is within the South Atlanta Town Square LCI. And so therefore we requested, actually we have already submitted the application, we're requesting the formal approval of the resolution that we will forward on to ARC.
Ms. Wakefield, this is for the area along South Atlanta Street, and it's being done in conjunction with our Gateway Transportation Project. So I understand the council has approved funding of doing a master plan for that area that will help coordinate land use and transportation.
Yes,
so this
sir.
will complement or help fund that initiative.
Yes, sir. It will.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from council? Councilmember Price?
Just, are there other possibilities besides that exact project and location that would also be eligible?
only those areas that are within that LCI that was approved a few years ago. You can only use a supplemental LCI if you're trying to enhance an LCI that has previously been approved. So, I mean, based on what was submitted, we believe that it would go, and it makes sense that we would look a little bit beyond just the gateway area that the transportation staff is currently working with a consultant on.
Are there any other comments or questions from council? Do we have any comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, I've closed the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the resolution for FY 2011 LCI supplemental study application.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Nguyen. All in favor, raise your hands. That is unanimous.
The second item is, this is the public hearing to receive comments on development of the draft Roswell Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Consolidated Action Plan. Ms. Wakefield.
Yes, this is one of the many steps that the city has to take in order to manage the city's community development block grant program. At this time, we're asking for a public hearing, and this is a public hearing without a document before you to solicit comments before we develop the document. So the Department of HUD requires that we hold 2 public hearings and a 30-day comment period. This is the first such public hearing that will be held before the Consolidated Action Plan is drafted. And each year the city will have to develop this annual action plan based on the needs and the priorities identified in the consolidated plan. Because the city is entering the 3rd year of Fulton County's 5-year consolidated plan, HUD has directed us to continue using their consolidated plan, which runs from 2012 to 2014 for the CDBG program. Stephanie Dye is going to come up and talk a little bit about the priorities that are within that consolidated plan and what we have to include in the annual action plan. And afterwards, I believe we have some folks here that would like to provide public comments, because we have to document that for HUD on this program.
Isn't it? Thank you. I just wanted to mention that this annual action plan, under the priorities that are in the consolidated plan for Fulton County, our CDBG home and public housing authority programs are all part of the way that we'll be able to meet those priorities. The home program will be mentioned in our action plan, but the actual program itself is covered in Cobb County's annual action plan as part of that home consortium. The priorities that were identified in Fulton County's 5-year strategic plan include the first as homeless needs. These are services to assist individuals and families that are transitioning from a life on the streets to permanent housing. And those activities include emergency and transitional housing, prevention and supportive services, and permanent supportive housing. Priority 2 are affordable housing needs, and this includes programs and services that are directed at the development and maintenance of affordable housing units, which can be both rental or home ownership, and direct assistance to families and individuals to assist with rental payments and home ownership. These activities can include single-family housing rehab, public housing, transitional housing, rental assistance, down payment assistance, rental rehabilitation, and CHODO affordable housing, which is the certified housing development organizations or the housing nonprofits that we fund primarily through our home program. Priority 3 are non-housing community development needs, and this is a broad range of needs encompassing 3 primary areas: public facilities, public services, and economic development. Public facilities is where most of the city's projects have been categorized in the past. This would include both public structures and public infrastructure activities, such as property acquisition, construction, or rehabilitation of a community center, or senior center, or any other facilities that offer services to low and moderate income persons. Public infrastructure improvements would include things like upgrading streets and public utility systems, such as the water, sewer, or electrical. Public service funds are made available to assist nonprofit agencies and other agencies within the county to improve services that address needs including employment, crime prevention, child care, health care, drug abuse, education, energy conservation, welfare, or recreation. And economic development funds are made available for city programs or other agencies that provide services and or facilities that promote business creation and expansion and create or retain jobs for low or moderate income persons. The fourth category of priorities is other special needs, and this group would include things like the elderly, mental illness, substance abuse, addictions, single parents, abused, neglected children, or any other limited clientele groups. I think I have this. And just in summary, the elements of the annual action plan include an executive summary, a general category, which includes the demographics and the priorities, addressing obstacles to any underserved needs, and which HUD programs this plan actually covers, which in our case would just be CDBG. The process, and that process would include who the lead agency is and how the plan was developed and who else participated in the plan, and the actions that we're going to take to enhance coordination between public and private housing, health, and social service providers. It also includes the citizen participation plan, institutional structure, monitoring, lead-based paint requirements, housing objectives, public housing needs, barriers to affordable housing, which includes a large data effort called an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. That's the first step in this action, which we'll have 18 months to prepare through a consultant. Homeless prevention elements, community development, identifying non-housing community development needs such as public facilities, public improvements, public services, and economic development, and the short-term and long-term community objectives for community development in the next year. An anti-poverty strategy to reduce the number of poverty-level families in the next year, and the special needs, which are non-homeless special needs, those priorities and objectives, and how federal, state, and local resources and private sector resources will be used as available. And finally would be the table of funding uses, which includes the approved CDBG projects for the coming year and the application process. Our next steps include the deadline for the applications, which is July 22nd. The next item would be to take the draft of the annual action plan and those approved projects, which will be in there, to the administration committee on August 9th, and then bring those to the council meeting for approval to publish the draft of the annual action plan on August 29th. Post this draft for public comment between August 31st and September 28th. And the second public hearing would be September 12th. Then the final action plan would be approved to send to HUD October 24th, and they must receive that plan by November 15th so that they can review it before the plan program year begins January 1st, 2012. That's it pretty much in a nutshell. If there are those who have comments but don't really wish to speak tonight, we have a need assessment in the back of the room that you can fill out and turn in any way you'd like. And there's also a survey online on our CDBG page of our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dyatt. This is a lot to take in, and I know the process has changed this year from how we have done it in the past because it's administered by the city. Can you explain in very simple terms what are the changes that the public will see for those folks who typically apply for CDBG funds? What's different for them? How do they need to look at this differently? Is there anything they need to know specifically other than the dates that you just showed?
Well, for our city departments and nonprofit agencies that are based, whose clientele is based in Roswell, will be competing for the same pot of money, which has not happened before. Typically, before in our program under the Fulton County Urban County Program, our allocation from HUD has gone completely to city projects, mainly infrastructure projects that the city has done, and nonprofits have applied to Fulton County directly for their funding.
So they will be competing for the funding that we receive, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that amount, does that stay the same? Has that gone up? Has it decreased?
It has decreased for everyone. It's gone down 15% from the 2009 allocation. I'm sorry, the 2010 allocation. And 2012 is not available yet.
Is that because of changes within Fulton County?
No, that's because of congressional appropriations.
Thank you. One other question I had, as far as prioritizing projects that come forward, you gave a list of various priorities. Who decides which projects receive the greatest priority? How are they actually evaluated?
That how the applications are going to be evaluated against one another?
Yes.
Is that okay? That's going to be some sort of an executive committee here at the city. I don't know how that's going to be. This is transitioning away from community development and the new program going towards the admin department and the grant manager, and I think that they're going to probably be the ones who are mainly going to decide what that committee is going to look like.
Mr. Mayor,
committee.
Ultimately, the council will be making the decision
yes.
related on those priorities.
I'm sorry.
We will provide some general information, guidance related to criteria and requirements that are met, and then through the committee system, the council will prioritize those and move those forward.
So the applications will be evaluated by an executive committee, but then brought to the council committee for action?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Price.
I'm not sure if this is going to require a motion since it's just a public hearing this evening, but it's a little unclear in the packet what exactly constitutes the 30-day comment period, and are comments taken outside of those, since this evening is a public hearing, and then it looks like the next comment period doesn't start till the end of August, but then we're having a second hearing on August 9th. I'm just trying to reconcile all the dates.
I know. But we're required to have 2 public comment periods, and we're in the midst of the first one that was advertised earlier in the month. And that is supposed to be held before there's a draft to receive public comments. The second one is intended to be held after we have a draft for the public to be able to respond to that draft. Does that help?
I guess so. It's just that we're apparently in a public comment period already.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all right. That works. Okay.
Are there any further comments from council? Do we have any questions or comments from the public? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward, state your name, and give us your address.
My name's Barbara Duffy. I live on Hollyberry Drive in Roswell, and I work at North Fulton Community Charities. I want to thank you for an opportunity to speak. I want to say, first of all, I commend Ms. Dye and Ms. Wakefield for interacting with the nonprofits who kind of stood up and screamed and said, wait, this is going to hurt. And they have worked very hard to come back and try and put something together. But I think what's happened, and I think you need to understand that the unintended consequence of Roswell saying, I want to go my own way, is that in the long run, Roswell is going to have less benefit, because in the past, the federal allocation that has come to Roswell has been spent by the city on city projects. And the nonprofits who serve residents have been able to go to Fulton County and apply for a piece of that allocation. So in effect, Roswell had their own allocation, and then they had the monies on top of that Fulton County was able to allocate. Last year, if I read this correctly, there were 5 nonprofits, including North Fulton Charities, who received a total of $210,000 in CBDG funds. For North Fulton Community Charities, we have averaged right around $60,000 for the last 6-7 years. In CBDG funds, we have put on a roof, improved the air conditioning, done increased parking, all things that will benefit the families that we serve, most of whom live in Roswell. So again, I want to say thank you for working with us, but I think you need to understand that the effect is there's less money. Thank you.
Please come forward, state your name and address.
Kathy Swan. I'm with the Drake House. Our address is 10500 Clara Drive in Roswell. I, too, would like to thank Ms. Dye and Ms. Wakefield for their support. I know this is a new process to include all the nonprofits that are coming forward, and we appreciate your past support. But as Barbara Duffy stated, the Drake House in the last 2 years will have received, including this fiscal year, almost $200,000 in monies through CDBG, through Fulton County. So we are looking forward to the process, but it will cut significantly into our capital funding. The other thing I would like to suggest, perhaps, when the executive committee reviews the applications, if you might consider including a citizens review panel to be a part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
My name is John Smith. I live on North Point Way here in Roswell. I'm here as a private citizen, although some of you may know that I recently terminated a career, retired from the Drake House, and before that I was with Homestretch. I've been working with community development block grant money almost as long as Barbara Duffy, since about 1994. It is a tremendous asset to the nonprofits because it allows them access to monies that is very difficult to get otherwise. You heard Kathy Swan. Kathy succeeded me at the Drake House, so she's speaking about the process there. I would just like to say a couple of things. Number one, I'm extraordinarily disappointed that this is a public hearing. This is a council meeting. Usually a public hearing is where there's an opportunity to have a dialogue with the folks who are implementing the plan and putting together their ideas, not to make a presentation to the City Council. I'm honored and appreciate the opportunity to do that, but it would be, I think, much more beneficial for those of us who are going to apply. I'm not one of those. For those who are going to apply, to have the opportunity to have some dialogue with Stephanie and Ms. Wakefield about this whole process. I don't think anybody in the nonprofit world really understands that there's an application that evidently has to be submitted by the end of July. Is that correct? And then how that's going to interplay with the needs of the city. Because the city is going to come in with all their infrastructure requirements, and if there's only $150 or $175 or $225,000, which to the nonprofit is a lot of money, to the city is probably not very much. But if we're competing with new sewers on Oak Street, we probably don't have a chance in the nonprofit community. And I'd be interested to know how the city's going to manage all of that, because basically those who are in the nonprofit world who are serving the citizens of this city, and this city has changed remarkably, and I think City Council understands that, has changed remarkably over the past few years, will have less opportunity to do that in a professional, dignified way. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Hearing no other comments, I close the public hearing. I did want to address a couple comments. It is a concern of mine, and I think of this council, that there would be a reduction in funds going to the nonprofits, and certainly that is not the intention of this group. We certainly want to support our nonprofits and make sure that they thrive, because they have had a tremendous impact on our community, and we recognize that. I also had a question for staff about the public hearing process. I agree that it would be nice to have some meetings, or a meeting or meetings where we could answer questions and interact directly. I'm sure you all are in the process of getting out information to each of the nonprofits in the city, but Ms. Wakefield, if you could elaborate on that.
I would be glad to. In fact, we've had 2 meetings with the nonprofits. When we had a meeting when we realized that there was going to be an impact to the nonprofits by moving toward taking over the program. We had another meeting with the nonprofits to discuss the application and the application process. Stephanie has sent several emails out to the nonprofits, so we've tried to involve them and keep them informed as much as possible. And I know that this public hearing is a little odd from most public hearings because you really don't have anything to react to, and that's basically a requirement of the federal government, that you have a public hearing to get input in order to develop the plan. In, I guess, another month, we will have a draft action plan for folks to react to. We will submit forward that to the nonprofits and try to answer and work with them as any questions that they may have.
As far as the actual funding, it seems that there is an overall reduction beyond the congressional allotment that we had talked about.
Yes, sir.
What is the reasoning for that? I understand they used to apply directly, but why can they no longer apply directly to Fulton County?
Well, several things. Now, Fulton County is an entitlement community, which means you get an allocation from the federal government. You do not have to compete with the other cities like some of the cities in South Fulton do. So if you have any nonprofits that provide a service to 51% of Roswell residents, then their funding through CDBG has to come out of the city's funding. When we were under the contract with Fulton County, and I don't know why they did it this way. They treated the city as a city that would normally compete instead of an entitlement city. Thus, the reason that a lot of the nonprofits have been able to go directly to Fulton County. We have had discussion with Fulton County. There is some thought that there might be some other funding sources to help the nonprofits. We believe that there are a few of them that still should qualify for the Fulton County CDBG funds.
So those discussions are in process with Fulton County?
As much as possible.
Okay. Let us know if there's anything the mayor and council can do to help that dialogue.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Love?
One comment, we do know a change from Fulton County is that at Fulton County they are now requiring a 50% match. So that would have been in place whether or not the city had decided to separate from them related to CDBG. So that certainly will impact the not-for-profits, even for those programs that may be allowed or specific. Sometimes Fulton County will have money left over, as they have this past year, and it did allow at least one of the not-for-profits to get a larger amount for a specific capital project than would otherwise be available. There may still be opportunities related to that, but that is not known at this point. Ms. Wakefield and I did meet with the director and the county manager to talk about this transition process. It is in play. It does change daily. Information straggles in from Fulton County, so we are very mindful and sensitive that this is a very important issue to the not-for-profits as it is to the city. So we are diligently trying to move through that transition process.
You mentioned a 50% match. How would that work?
Our understanding, and Fulton County has not promulgated all these rules yet, but our understanding from the meeting that we had with the director and the county manager is that there would have to be, their words were skin in the game for a particular project or request for funding. So the entity would request that from Fulton County, provide the same documentation that they have in the past, except this time they would have to show or demonstrate where 50% of that match would come from. It is not necessarily a required cash match. There are opportunities for in-kind and other things that would count towards that, but they don't want to be a funding or financing mechanism any longer for some projects that they feel that have been in the past, and it is one of the ways they are trying to triage their reduction in funds from HUD.
So that 50% match would come directly from the applicant, not from the city?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments from council? Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I'm glad that you brought up about the public hearing. It's very odd to have a public hearing in the middle of a city council meeting. When I saw that, I went, no, I don't know about this. I'm assuming, Ms. Wakefield, that since the next public hearing is really going to get into the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty of this, that we will have either public hearing before maybe city council meeting or separate from the city council meeting. Am I correct on that?
We'll work with Ms. Love to make that happen.
I just think that since that has been brought up, and I see some of the nonprofits that's not even speaking tonight here, that maybe we should dedicate a lot of time for the nonprofits to really hash through what's happening there and be able to get some comments out and be able to interact with staff, because right now they're not being able to do that. So I would appreciate if we can look at some type of separate public hearing. I know it's another meeting, but even if it's before the city council, maybe we could do something like that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Diamond.
Ms. Wakefield, are Alpharetta and Milton entitlement communities?
No, they're not. They do not participate in the CDBG program.
Okay, that's part of my answer, I guess, and I'm still struggling, and it's not because you haven't tried your best to make me understand this, but I'm still having trouble understanding why Fulton County has chosen to take this path, and I guess unless somebody tells me otherwise, I'd love to hear from more of our commissioners that this is a lost cause. I don't know if we've gone as far up the food chain as we can, and maybe you have, staff-wise, but I guess I'd be interested to hear the commissioner's take on this. I guess my point being, I don't know that we've given up on the idea that there's no money on this previous path that we've had. I realize there's been reductions even in that, and it would be more complicated, but
we can certainly go back to Fulton County, but as I understand it, it is a federal regulation, and Fulton County was providing that opportunity to the city because they were managing the city program, and the city was being treated more like a city that competes versus an entitlement city. But we can definitely circle back with them.
So they've eliminated cities besides us who have not left their constraints?
Sandy Springs manages their own program. Johns Creek managed their own program. Of course, the city of Atlanta manages their own program.
So you think it's less related to managing our own program now than just the budgetary restrictions?
I think it's more, it's a combination. It's related to when you decide to manage your own program, although you are an entitlement, you deal with all of the good and the bad that comes with entitlement. Meaning that you have to share your funds with your nonprofits that do not meet the threshold for a service delivery.
Thanks. I guess I just, at our level, I'd like to.
But we will go back and talk to Fulton County.
You've done everything you can do at the staff level. I guess I just would like to see what we can do on the elected level, maybe.
Are there any other comments by council? Councilmember Price.
I guess it's a little bit of unintended consequences, perhaps, because I know we generally like to be able to manage things as local as possible, and that's my understanding is we are initiating this. We're not being required to do this. So therefore, we hope that that's the best solution, given that there may be some cuts regardless. But could you address Ms. Duffy's comments that, that we're taking the wrong course, or that there is an alternative that wouldn't end us up in a worse situation?
I can't really address that specifically. I can only say that when we dealt with the county over the past year and a half that I have been in, the difficulty that we've had in trying to get the funding, trying to get our grant agreements, and trying to move the projects along, because if you remember, a year ago they were in jeopardy of losing their funding, which would have meant the city of Roswell would also lose their funding. We brought this discussion to the committee several times and asked for guidance as relate to taking over this program. When we discovered that there was an impact to the nonprofits, we also brought that discussion to the committee, and I think that was back in April or March, and basically provided options. You can do what Sandy Springs does and just fund your capital projects. You can do what Johns Creek does and share your projects. And the decision was made, the direction that staff received was that you would share the funding with the nonprofits.
Councilmember Orland.
Bingo. That's the point that I remember asking about at the committee meeting. And I guess my understanding of what was relayed to us, that there was some general cutback in funds through the feds to Fulton County, and it would affect us and the nonprofits in a similar fashion whether we pulled out or we didn't pull out. So you're in agreement with that. So now I'm getting feedback that there is a difference of whether we're doing it through Fulton County or we pull out on some of these extra funds that nonprofits have been able to get. So is that the correct understanding?
Not completely, because the city has an allocation based on a formula that the city is going to get regardless of what the decision Fulton County made about funding the nonprofits. I think what we were clear was that their funding was going to change based on our discussion with Fulton County. The 50% that Ms. Love talked about, we were advised by the director and the county manager that they were going to be requiring a 50% match, thus impacting the funding that the nonprofits had previously received.
Still seems like something is amiss here, and I'm not sure what it is.
Well, this is the first time I'm hearing, and I'm getting the sense the rest of the council's at least understanding for the first time that there would be a negative impact to the nonprofits. It was my understanding that there was an overall reduction, but the amount of money being allocated to the city would remain the same. And I'm not sure that we've heard that there was a reduction to the nonprofits, and maybe that was my mistake and some of us didn't hear that clearly. But certainly that's a concern, and it's going to be an ongoing concern because we don't want to have a negative impact on organizations that have such a positive impact on our city. So we need to mitigate that to the extent possible. Councilmember Dunn?
Maybe I'm asking the question backwards. If we had decided to stay with Fulton County, do we think that the nonprofits would have been any better off? I mean, I don't know that we would have decided that knowing that they were in such a precarious place, but
I really can't say because, I'm not involved in their process. I can only relay what I was told.
Yeah, because what I think that's what you gave us was what we knew of at the time. I'm not sure anybody realized that Fulton County was going to change the way they did this extra money, which now they're saying really isn't extra money.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you. I was late in that committee meeting coming in, so I did not get the whole picture of what's going on. So, Ms. Wakefield, this 50% match, is that something new that Fulton County is now requiring of the nonprofits? And so if that's the case, then I'm assuming even if we stay with Fulton County and the CDBG program, the nonprofits would still have to do the 50% match. Am I correct on that?
That is my understanding, yes.
And this is something brand new for this fiscal year?
Yes.
So anybody that's applying to Fulton County for CDBG money, nonprofits would have to do the 50% match.
That is my understanding from their director.
And the director's name?
Troy White.
Okay.
And Zach Williams was also involved in the meeting.
And that's this county attorney?
The county manager.
Okay. The county manager,
yes.
Correct. So that's where I'm hearing, it's not so much the loss of funds, it is how our CDB or how our nonprofits would be able to match that 50%. Or is it a combination of both?
It may be a combination of both.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there any other comments by council? If not, we'll move on to the next item, but I guess direction to staff is just continue to work with our nonprofits and to keep us informed as to what avenues we can help assist with additional funding and so forth. Thank you. The next item is with the Recreation and Parks Department. In Councilmember Eaglehart's absence, I'd call on Ms. Love to present the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. This item is approval of an IGA with Fulton County Board of Ed to use Elkins Point Middle School multipurpose field and track for lacrosse program, as well as for the city to appropriate $150,000 towards the renovations at that field. Mr. Glover?
Thank you. I think the biggest difference in this IGA and any of the others that we have, and we probably have 10 or 12 existing with the school system, is we're going to be paying the Fulton County Board of Education to do the work on that field to make the improvements. As we discussed at the committee meeting, Elkins Point Middle School is we'll be redoing the multi-purpose field and track in that particular area, new sod sprinkler system, bringing in water and lighting for that facility. I have with me tonight Mr. David Knotts from the Fulton County Board of Education if there's any questions pertaining to the project.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Price.
The anticipated completion date would be within FY 2012 or?
The completion date would be probably October, November of this year.
Okay, so do we have in our budget then the ongoing costs for the electricity, the irrigation, the water, the portalets, all those other things that are now going to be liabilities?
Yes, we do. We're also getting a donation from the lacrosse board to help pay for any extra cost.
Was that the $30,000 or different pot of money?
That's the $30,000, and they will commit more after this season's over.
But what do you anticipate the ongoing operating costs?
Roughly about, I think it's about $5,000 a year for the lighting, and the water is probably $1,500 to $2,000. I'm not exactly sure on the water.
I guess my concern is how this has come to us. I know it was in the budget as a line item, and I noted it at the time, and I don't think any of us really asked any questions about what was it going to entail. And then it came up to committee, and of course the financial impact was, oh, it's okay, it's in the budget. Well, it was in the budget really prior to us having any discussions about it. So I kind of feel like we're doing this a little bit backwards. That now we're scrutinizing it and figuring out how it fits into the overall future budgets. So I guess I'm just a little disappointed or concerned that we're kind of doing this in a backwards fashion, and that in the time of.
Well, this was part of the original submission that the department heads turn in February of each year. So we had this line item in the budget from February on.
Right. But what I'm saying is we never discussed it as a project. In other words, it was a new addition to the budget prior to any discussions about the project. Is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Glover, was the amount for the work as well as the operating costs, were the operating costs in the budget that you submitted?
It's in the operating budget.
So we're covered both for the construction as well as the operating side of this?
Yeah, part of the funds that we will receive from the lacrosse board will go into the operating budget to help defray any extra costs there.
But that's just a one-time payment?
Yeah, they're paying $30,000 for the construction portion of it. They've committed another $30,000 for there's some extra fencing that may need to be done, and then the balance would be used for the operating cost.
Well, I guess to address Councilmember Price's concern as far as paying for the ongoing maintenance of these fields and utilities and so forth, are those in the budget, and do we anticipate any issues going forward? Ms. Love.
Thank you. I apologize. I should not have put them in my mouth. I apologize. One of the discussions that we had during the budget process was what we call new initiatives, when a department's base budget is going to increase over the amount that they are appropriated in the current year. And basically we said there would be no base budget increases unless the department found a way to cover it. So what Recreation and Parks has done would be to have decreased other line items, absorbed cost as a way so that their budget did not increase to accommodate these operating costs. If there are operating cost increase, then we do have that commitment from the lacrosse boosters, for lack of a better way of saying it, to cover that. We will have to take a look at that at the end of the year once we have gone through a season, once the renovations have occurred, and it will be the responsibility of Mr. Glover and his staff to cover those operating costs.
That's correct.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Mr. Glover, if we were to build a new lacrosse field, what would be the approximate cost to build that?
If we started from scratch with a piece of property, it would probably be somewhere around $300,000, just guessing on an average, depending on the site and how much grading had to be done, where the utilities, where you have to bring utilities in, if there's water, if there's sewer. There's so many variables in that, but just the basics, it gets very expensive to start from scratch on those.
Do we have any idea what it would cost to purchase the land itself in Roswell? Do we need an acre or half acre?
Well, you're talking a little over an acre of property, and
over an acre.
Today's market, I'm not sure what that would be, but $200,000 or $300,000 just for that, I'm sure.
I was going to say probably more than the $150,000 we're paying.
Yes, sir.
So this is a good bargain for the city. That
yes,
we
sir.
are saving a lot of money by not having to use our land and pay for the construction of the field completely on our own. So it seems like this is a real plus for us and a great opportunity for us to partner with Fulton County Schools.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, questions from the council? Do we have any comments or questions from the public? Sir, if you take a seat for a moment, I do have one last question from, you can sit up here in the front. Councilmember Price.
I guess my question is regarding the utilization of our current fields, and I think you had alluded not long ago that baseball fields are not fully utilized. Is there any ability to retrofit some of our baseball fields into a lacrosse field, or have we done any kind of comparative analysis that this is really the best route to go, given that at the end of the period, should Fulton County decide not to continue with us, they can sever the contract. Therefore, we've sort of given lights, et cetera, to the school board.
Well, the information about the baseball fields, I'm afraid, is probably not correct. We do utilize all of our baseball fields now. When we have the big lacrosse tournament, we use all the baseball fields also for the lacrosse tournament. Baseball didn't get to use them that weekend. We have analyzed every field we've got. This will be the first field that's been dedicated for the primary use for lacrosse. They've never had their own field. They've had to share football fields, soccer fields, or whatever we've had. This is a very good bargain. We've got a very good track record with Fulton County Board of Education, and again, David Knotts is here to help answer any of those questions. But we've recently redoing all the intergovernmental agreements. And we've had agreements with Crabapple Middle School since the early '80s, and other schools that we have, the high schools, all the elementary schools. It has probably saved the city of Roswell taxpayers an awful lot of money over the years. What we've been able to do in developing facilities with in conjunction with the Board of Education. It's also saved Board of Education money, which in turn saves Roswell taxpayers money at the same time for developing joint use facilities, like this. So it's a win-win for both organizations.
And in those other situations, we also have a capital outlay?
Yes, we did at Sweet Apple Elementary School, Roswell North Elementary School, Roswell High School, Centennial High School. It goes on and on.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the council? This time I'd like to open it to public comment. Yes, sir. Please come forward. Apologize for interrupting you before.
Good evening. My name's David Knotts. I'm with the Fulton County School District. I serve in charge of real estate for the school district. I just wanted to say we appreciate the relationship we've had with Joe Glover and his staff. It's been remarkable. I joined the district a little over a year ago, and it's been a long process of ensuring what the community wants through the school district as well as the city of Roswell residents. And I really appreciate what City of Roswell is doing for us relative to Elkins Point and the other, I think it's 9 IGAs that we're working on right now, as Mr. Glover said. So we appreciate it, and I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate all that Fulton County Schools does for our community, for our children, and we appreciate the opportunity to partner with you. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, I've closed the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Motion to accept the IGA.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other further comments or questions from council? All in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. We now have an item on our city attorney's report. Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. The first item is the approval of a resolution to set a hearing date for an appeal of the issuance of an alcohol license to R&B Wines and Spirits and Boniface Auta, 1425 Market Boulevard, number 300, Roswell, Georgia. At the last alcoholic beverage licensing board, the board issued a license to Mr. Auta and R&B Wines and Spirits. After the license was issued, a couple of other establishments came forward, I think, at the end of the meeting and said they didn't think the survey was done correctly. I've looked at the survey. I talked to the surveyor. He said he did it correctly. The other alcohol license facilities had another surveyor come in, said that it wasn't done correctly. An appeal was filed within a timely manner. They paid the $100 fee to appeal, and that appeal is directly to council. So with that, this resolution would just set the hearing date for July 25th, and we will provide notice to all the parties.
Mr. Davidson, is this a requirement?
It's a requirement that the council hear the appeal from the board.
Do you need to read the resolution? We need a motion.
Yes, please.
Are there any comments or questions from the council? Do we have any comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, I close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move for the appeal to be heard by the council at the July 25th, 2011 Mayor and City Council meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Do we have any further discussion by council? All in favor, raise your hands. Is it unanimous? Mr. Davidson?
The final item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss real estate.
We have a recommendation for closure to discuss real estate. Do we have a motion? Motion by Councilmember Nguyen. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Price. All in favor, raise your hands. That's unanimous. This meeting is adjourned.